This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Rob Olenek is tantalizingly close. Though it is possible for Thiel and Trancray to overtake him in the points, the odds are stacked against them. But all three of these drivers will not be able to count the proverbial chickens until they see the checkered flag, especially at this circuit. Montreal is notorious for punishing the smallest of mistakes, and races could end unceremoniously without warning. Can Rob hold out to claim his first Lotus 49 championship? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch the final round of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Johan Vandenbelt. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Johan's circuit Gilles Villeneuve didn't actually see the Lotus 49 race in real life, but it certainly makes for a fun challenge in iRacing.
Absolutely, Joe. I always think that this car-track combo is a very, very good one. Now, Canada and Formula One, those two have had a rich relationship for decades, and this track, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, is largely to thank for that. The track is located in Montreal and lies across two islands in the St. Lawrence River that were used for several international events, including the 1976 Summer Olympics. Now, 2 years after this, the track was built and finished on the location, which has hosted F1 Grand Prix over 30 times. Now, this 4.3 kilometer track for me has always been synonymous with the walls around it. The exit of the turn 4 chicane, the fast exit of turn 7 and the hairpin at turn 10 all have seen big names end their races in the concrete barriers. But maybe the most famous of these all is the final chicane of the track, the lovingly called Wall of Champions, where in 1999 in Formula 1, Hill, Schumacher and Villeneuve all saw the race descent. Now combine this track that quickly punishes mistakes with a car that's also very difficult to drive, and I think that we're set for a very exciting season finale. So before we go to qualifying, let's hop on board the Lotus 49 as we take you for the final lap guide of the season, this time around Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
Alright, we're in the GSRC LOTUS 49, so let's do a lap around Montreal. With the Senna S, you really have to swing the car in from the opposite side to line up the braking better. You'll see that a lot on this lap. There's a few lines you can take through this chicane hairpin combo, but I prefer an aggressive entry and then squaring off the exit. Applying the power will be tricky on this uphill curve. Then, brake early as you come into turn 3. Be careful with the wall on the exit because it'll be incredibly easy to clip it if the tail snaps loose while getting to the gas. 5 is flat out in pretty much all modern race cars, but in the 49 you need a big lift through here. Make sure and pull the car back to the right and stomp the brakes for 6. Once again, the lack of downforce on this older car makes accelerating painstakingly hard. Feather it as you come onto the backstretch and then get yourself ready for the braking into 8. The long braking distances of this car means you're on the binders way before you come to the bridge. Try not to climb over these white sausage curbs too much because they'll make the car bounce around and cost you valuable time you could use to get on the throttle. Now, as we head up the casino hairpin, even though this is still a good place to pass, you're once again swinging the car across the track to line up your braking. Your exit will also be very different in this car and sort of counterintuitive. I try to hug the inside even as I come off the corner because there's a little rise here. If the wheel isn't perfectly straight, it'll come out from under you. I've never experienced that in any other car in iRacing, and just goes to show the incredible power inside this beast of a machine. As we fly along the fastest straight of the circuit, hold to the left and spot your brake marker. The Wall of Champions poses the same threat it always does, and I found it's best to run tight on the first apex in order to open up the second one. From there, you simply accelerate to the line, and hopefully you've now finished a lap around Montreal.
You see a lap around Montreal as the cars get warmed up here and get ready for qualifying. Let's take a glance at that championship just to give you the specifics on how everything sits. We've glossed over a little bit, but 21 points doesn't tell the whole story there between first and second. Teal having jumped up a position. So did Trankert. That's because McClarich has not been able to show up for these final rounds, so he is out of contention for the championship. Now, the drop points will make the difference. So it is actually 31 points that Gary Teal has to score to have a chance at the victory. Here's where it gets even more complicated. Tiebreakers tend to be won by who wins the most races. Well, Olenik's only won one race. Gary Teal has won 0, and Ove Trangrade has won 0. So it'll have to go back to, I think, most second places, which will most likely go to Ove Trangrade, considering his score of, I believe it was something like 5. We'll get that confirmed a little later. Let's go to the F2 points. How is that is actually just as tight from what you were telling me before the race.
I think it's a little bit tighter even, Joe, because those Formula 2 drivers, look at that. Grand Prix, he's leading, but the gap between him and Hugh Haycox is only 6 points. So it's very tight for the final race of the season. Now, mathematically speaking, Hideki Kofisto and Colin Coker, they can still grab the title as well. But being 36 and 41 points behind respectively, they need some chaos on the track to be able to seal the deal. Most likely, those drivers will look behind them. Keep an eye on Andrew Eng to defend the final podium position. Now, looking at the drivers that have joined us today, we have to keep in mind that Hugh Haycox and Hideki Kofisto unfortunately didn't join, so the title will be between Graham Patullo and Colin Coker. But Colin Coker and Andrew Eng are both on track as well, and it will be exciting to see which of those will finish on the podium in the Formula 2 Championship.
Of course, they have a Constructors' Championship in this series, but unlike modern F1, they do it like they did back in '67. Where they do it as a Nations Cup. And you can see the U.S. leading by a fair amount. The United Kingdom has not got too much of a chance to try and overtake. Norway is definitely out of it, even though they've jumped up 2 spots into third. Australia stays where they are, and Germany is the one that falls down 2 spots. What do we got in store for the race itself, Johan?
Yeah, quickly, most people will of course know by now that this is the final race of our 12-round championship. 2 drop weeks. We already talked about that in the championship, which means that the 2 worst results of each driver will be removed. The race distance today around this 4.3 kilometer track will be 22 laps with open setups. The points they pay out to 25th position, with 50 points going to the victor.
And of course, we're once again watching this on the iRacing Esports Network. Thanks for tuning in. But if you get a chance, make sure and subscribe. All you got to do is go to the YouTube page for IESN, click the big red button, and you'll get all of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix legends in your YouTube feed. Qualifying has already got some laps in. Joni Kajanen is currently on the pole. Roman Pavlowski, one of the few other drivers to get a win so far this season, is currently sitting on the outside of the front row. And then there's our championship leader, Rob Olenek, who is in third. Now, you might be thinking, well, I haven't seen Joni Kajanen so far this year. Well, we've also got a few other big names that aren't familiar, but certainly are showing some muscle. World Championship driver Cooper Webster is here, and Dave Halink is in as well with the number 1 with an 8,000 I rating and a black stripe on his car, just as Rob Olenek now goes to the pole to show up some of these black stripe drivers. And for our viewers that might not understand why we've got the black stripe drivers in here, why do we have all these big names coming in here today, Johan?
I think that has something to do with the Super Session tonight, which is one of the special races of iRacing each season, which will award the drivers with quite a hefty coin credit price if they do well in that race. And I think that some of these new drivers might have seen that announcement and thought, like, let's try this Lotus 49 around the Gilles Villeneuve circuit, see if we can get some coin that way. But for now, however, it seems like both Cooper Webster and Dave Halink a little bit further down the order. Stefan Slager, we see him on screen at the moment. He hasn't set the time yet. Was of course commentating last week when we were in Indianapolis with his first lap time. He puts himself into 10th place. It'll be interesting to see how impressive, how good those black belt drivers will be. Maybe we can put our focus on Dave Gelink at the moment as he's coming across the final chicane. Last time around, he clubbed at the curbstones a little bit hard there. Almost lost control of the car. This time he goes a lot better. He's P7 with a 32.6. Coming across the line, he needs to win in 1.5 seconds, and he does so. 1.6 seconds. He puts himself in pole position, so the advantage is to the pro drivers. Rob Olenek, our championship leader, he will defend his position from the second row of the grid.
Let's see if anybody else has the opportunity to finish a lap here. About a minute and a half left. Ove has already finished both of his laps, so he is stuck at 5th place highest. I see Stefan Schlacker, who's recently come in, been a bit of a mid-pack driver. Maybe he could get himself in the mix. He's got a lap less left to finish as it comes up to Lepingle. Pretty tricky trying to get on the throttle out of this corner with no downforce on this car. So he accelerates away down the rowing lake on the long run. Let's see how much speed he can get wound up in this slippery machine. Already at 170, still climbing 180 miles per hour. And braking very early, looks just shy of 190 top speed along there.
Squirming as he goes back on the throttle there out of the final chicane. He keeps it all the way on the right side of the track to minimize the track that he has to cover. He had a 33.1. He goes 0.2 of a second quicker. And that gains him 1 position. He started racing P9. And that was the last driver, I think, out there who was able to do that just finished the second qualifying lap.
Indeed, Matt Wright did not improve. So that gives us our starting grid with Dave Gelink on the pole. Joni Kaijinen will be next to him, and Rob Olenek, who's really not concerned with either of them, just where he finishes, will start 3rd ahead of all of his rivals. Roman Pawlowski will be P4. Other championship hopeful, Ove Trangrade starts 5th. Cooper Webster 6th. Row 4 all the way back there for Gary Teal, long ways back in 7th. And Daniel Sadro starts 8th. Stefan Schlacker will be P9, and Marco Kika rounds out your top 10.
First driver outside of that is Matt Wright, who unfortunately in his last qualifying lap had a little wiggle in the final corner. Saw his effort destroyed there. Blake Purdy starts the race behind him, just in front of Philippe Urquhart. Graham Petullo starts on the outside of row 7 in front of Andrew Eng. Colin Coker will be found behind him. So the 3 drivers that are the main protagonists for the Formula 2 Championship, all nice and close together. And then row 9 we found 2 drivers that didn't manage to set a qualifying time. Don Good in P17 and Robert Reynolds starts the race in Canada in P18.
Obviously, a decent field. Good to see, considering we've got a lot of people competing also in the 24 Hours of Le Mans for iRacing this weekend, which has just started itself. So all of our classic vintage cars lining up on the grid here in Canada. And interestingly enough, the French-speaking area of Montreal. So it's a very, very French weekend here on iRacing. Just a few more cars to get out there. Gary Teal, Stefan Schlacker waiting to take to the grid. Can Gelink make good on that qualifying pace and take a win here today? This isn't going to give him the $500 in iRacing credits, but it'll certainly be a good sign if he can carry it on to the, of course, big race later on today as the engines start to rev. Lights are up. Green flag is out. Dave Gelink has a great start. Joni Kaijinen not so much, though. Rob Olenek already looking to the inside, coming down into the first corner, but he's going to be on the outside as it goes back to the hairpin. We got a car spinning off into the back. It's Ove Trangrade. Bad news for him in the championship hunt, but otherwise everyone clean through the first set of corners.
As he reaches turn 4, everything goes back to single file. Over Trangrade got a little bump from one of the other pro drivers, Cooper there. And let's spun him around. We can go to a replay of that, but let's just continue to see what happens exactly on track. We still have some side-by-side. Matt Wright and Blake Purdy. Blake Purdy gaining a few positions in the opening lap. All the way up front, Daniel Cedro gets by Stefan Schlacker. He stays in front. The top 4 drivers, so the top 2, P2, P3 and P4 are close together with Dave Gelink driving away slightly now. They have a gap to P2 to P3 to Gary Teal, who's trying to fend off Cooper Webster.
Webster very much on the attack and look to the inside as they come down into Lepingle. tries to outbrake Gary Thiel. He does have a nose in. Thiel could try the over-under, but it doesn't look like that one's coming. In fact, already Thiel, oh, it gets a bad exit. Here goes Stefan Schlacker up to P6 already.
Great start from Stefan Schlacker. He really is putting the hammer down in this opening lap. Let's see if he can continue. Up front, however, Dave Gelink is coming across the final chicane now. A lot of oversteer there as he bounces over the curbstones. That might give the opportunity to Joni Kaisinen to close down the gap a little bit. The gap between those two drivers at the moment is around 0.6 of a second. Phil is trying to close down. Dave Gelink has a huge moment there into the first corner. That catches up everyone behind him. Rob Olenek is now very close as well. And Roman Pawlowski, he loses connection slightly to the podium. But he's still right in the mix there.
Now, I'm not sure if there was contact with the wall or another car, but Gary Thiel and Purdy both came into the pits. Purdy's been in and out, but Thiel...
Ooh, and Overtrangerate is out. Yeah, big crash happened behind there. Overtrangerate was involved in that. Marco Kika was involved in that. Grand Prix was involved in that. A lot of drivers there. We go to replay. I don't know with who we are on board at the beginning. Focus on what happened with Overtrangerate. You can actually see that what happened was just in front of Overtrangerate. It was right on the apex of turn 2. In front of them there was an overtaking. It was maybe a little bit too late braking of Grand Prix, who rear-ended into Marco Kika, and then Overtrangerate was involved in that. Lost his nose, so he had some damage because of that. Actually took a tow to the pits. Yeah, go on board with him. You can see it happening in front. Grand Prix just bunches up, doesn't expect the car in front to brake as much as he did. Overtrangerate couldn't avoid that.
I get the sense that maybe he touched the suspension just right, that unfortunately it gave him a meatball. You could see our front drivers still being led by Dave. Kaisinen giving chase. Olenek, current championship leader, sits in third, and Pawlowski in fourth. Now, with both Trangrade and Thiel out early, this practically hands the championship to Rob, but it is, of course, not guaranteed because points are given all the way down to 25th. However, Gary Thiel will need to finish 6th or higher. That looks highly unlikely at this point.
Yeah, I think so as well. At this moment, Rob Olenek just kind of has to focus on his own race and make sure that he brings it to the finish, because if he does, that championship will surely be his. Now, at the moment, he's actually losing connection to Joni Kaisinen a little bit. And look at Roman Pawlowski. He's just showing left and right himself in the mirrors of Rob Olenek, trying to put the car in front a bit under pressure. That seems to be working as they go towards Le Pigal at the moment. It's just 2 car lengths between these drivers.
Down into the hairpin. No attempt this time from Roman. And you're right, they are definitely losing touch with about 1.5 seconds up to Kaisinen. So as they give chase down the rowing lake, both of these drivers, Pawlowski and Olenek, have to be thinking, even with Michelle and Mick gone, what does it take to get a win in this series? They come through the wall of champions, everybody clean this time, but still being led by Dave Gelink.
Yeah, Dave Gelink is really fanning off Joni Kaisinen, and he's staying with him, Joni. He's not driving away, Dave, but Joni is just not close enough to try and take an overtaking opportunity to get that lead position. Roman Pawlowski at the same time behind just cannot put it side by side with Rob Olenek. There's a lot of battles happening at the moment, however. Another one, for example, is for P8, Philippe Urquhart and Matt Wright. Just had a nice overtaking maneuver from Philippe Urquhart. We don't have to go to a replay of that, but he got by Matt Wright. Now elevates himself to P8.
Nicely done. And worth mentioning as well that we've got still 16 drivers running here today. Thiel did get back out there. Kika has retired. Trangrade's still in the pits.
Sorry, Marco Kika is the first victim of the Wall of Champions, it seems like. Last time around, he was defending from Grand Prix behind him. There was the battle for P11. Just cutting the final chicane. He went too hard over that, launched himself into the wall, and that's the race over for the Finn.
So we come back up to the front of the field. Kaisinen starting to lose touch with Dave as well. He's back about half a second. although he's keeping them honest. Both of them coming swiftly through that final chicane. Still can't find anything through there. The top drivers spread apart. You can see back in fifth. We can't forget Cooper Webster, the other black stripe driver, still holding on, but he's a whole nearly 3 seconds back from the top 4.
Yeah, and the pace that Cooper is showing at the moment is just not comparable with the drivers up front. He's around a second per lap slower than Dave, so the gap between him and P1 is just growing ever more and more. Even to Roman Pawlowski and Rob Olenek, he's almost losing a second per lap, so Cooper really has to try to find a little bit more pace if he wants to catch up back to the people in front and have 5 or podium position today.
Honestly, the closest fight we've got is just what you see there on the edges of your screen for third place. Olenek and Pawlowski, 2 of our regular runners in this series, breaking down into turn 8. Still, Roman hasn't poked his nose out too much. From my experience, it seems like this car is surprisingly tough to pass around here, Johan.
Well, we just saw a pass a little bit further down the field. Let's go back maybe to a replay of that. That was the battle for P12, Colin Coker versus Blake Purdy. Blake Purdy had a beautiful overtaking maneuver out of turn 2. Colin Coker just outbraked himself a little bit in turn 1. And when you outbrake yourself there, you lose all the momentum in the next couple of corners. You can see him going wide here on board from Blake Purdy, just crossing beautifully under it, having a little wiggle there on the run down towards the turn 3-4 chicane, but he gets by him. That's a great overtaking maneuver from Blake Purdy. So like I say, Joe, it is difficult to make overtaking maneuvers here sometimes, but some of the drivers are succeeding in it, just punishing mistakes, as we see almost an overtaking maneuver for P3 there. Roman Pawlowski with a late move on Rob Olenek, but Rob Olenek didn't get scared or whatever. He didn't make a mistake. He was very cool just defending that move from Roman Pawlowski behind him.
I have to imagine by this point, Rob should have seen that Ove was sitting, or is sitting in the pit still, and that Gary Teal is well down the order. So, I mean, if you're Rob and you're being pressured this much, is it worth just handing the spot over just to ensure you finish, or knowing that, do you think that he's done the math, knowing that he actually can risk the position? Because at this point, even no matter where he finishes, he's got the championship.
Yeah, we calculated that he has to finish in the top 6 or something like that to grab the deal.
Gary Teal has to finish in 6.
Oh, sorry, yeah, he has to finish. So I think that someone like Rob Olenek should know that you can get a position, you can give the position away and let Roman pass you, but on the other hand, you just want to finish on a high note this season. You just want to finish with a podium position, and that means that you're going to fight your hardest to Roman Pawlowski and try your best to stay in front. Trying to stay in front happens as well for P1, as Dave Gelink is under a lot of pressure from Joni Kaisinen, who's on the inside as they go towards the final chicane. They're side by side going into the corner, but Joni Kaisinen gets by him. That's a beautiful move there from the Finn. He gets that P1 position. Dave Gelink tries to fight back immediately over the start-finish straight. He's very close there, but he goes a little bit earlier on the brakes. Cannot get by as they reach the turn 1, turn 2 section. They have to slot in single file again. And let's see now if Dave Gelink can, well, drive the same pace as Joni in front of him can. If he can follow the Finn and put him under pressure the next time they come around the final set of corners.
First time we've seen a lead change this race, and what this has done is allowed Olenek and Pawlowski to start to gain. It is just about a second between second and third position. They work their way onto the stretch along the river, and still they are continuing to chop down bit by bit on those top 2. If Dave starts to retake that position, I have a feeling it's going to become a 4-car battle once more, but no attempts quite yet.
Sorry, we see a spinner. Blake Purdy, one of the drivers that just had a beautiful overtaking maneuver a little while ago, just had a spin in turn 2. Don't think he touched the wall. We go to a replay of that incident, but this loses him a lot of time to Colin Coker behind, who he had quite a decent margin on. We see here on the replay him just going too hot into turn 1, looping it around, getting it in the correct direction again and taking off.
A nice job managing not to lose that. Meanwhile, battle is back on as Dave is going to try but he squeezes him too much. He spins out, but Kaisinen manages to hold on to it. He gets overtaken by both Olenek and Pawlowski. Move Gelink down into P4. Let's watch this one more time.
Yeah, that's you would almost put some blame on Dave Gelink more than Joni Kaisen there. He tries to squeeze a little bit too much, just tries too much to go back to the racing line, hits Joni Kaisen, and I would be surprised if both of these drivers don't have any suspension damage going forward, because that was actually quite a hard hit. You can see they're on board with Dave Gelink, just trying to squeeze a little bit more. Great save, however, after that contact though, to not really loop it around and end up in the Wolf Champions.
Hopefully he didn't damage the suspension with that contact. You can see is pretty much these top four all alone. Cooper Webster nowhere near close enough to take advantage of all that action. They are lapping a few cars. That is Robert Reynolds letting them through.
Yeah, this will be very interesting also for the battle between Roman Pawlowski and Rob Olenek, because compared to the battle for P1, that battle before P3, what is now P2, has actually been kind of tame. And let's see if Roman Pawlowski and Rob Olenek can put some pressure on maybe a slightly damaged Joni Kaisen, or if they have to defend from Dave Gelink very soon. We can see Roman Pawlowski with a great exit out of the hairpin now on the inside of Rob Olenek. This is the best run that he has so far in this race. These two drivers get very close as well, but they don't touch side by side through the final chicane. What a great driving from both of them, but this gives Dave Gelink a great run out of that corner. He gets by Roman Pawlowski, also by Rob Olenek, the side by side towards turn one. Rob Olenek defends, they hit each other. Dave Gelink punts him off. He breaks too late. Rob Olenek spins, luckily for him, avoids everyone. Cooper Webster gets by him as well, so our championship leader gets spun around, but he can continue, I think, with not a lot of damage in P5.
Shades of Perez and Massa at Montreal. A little bit of a late defensive move caught Gelink out a little bit, I'd say, and unfortunately, Olenek gets slots into P5 because of it. You can see, thankfully, did not spin back onto the track.
Yeah, very, very, very unfortunate from Rob Olenek. It was maybe a late move to try and defend of it, but Dave Gelink also let off the gas a little bit. So I think that Rob just thought he was clear and wanted to cover the dive bomb. But when Dave Gelink went on the brakes, there was nothing really that he could do to avoid Rob Olenek anymore. Let's just say, luckily for Rob Olenek, that he can still continue and doesn't have a lot of damage, it seems like.
Well, and more developments. Roman Pawlowski has wrecked out. Oh, just a touch to the inside of turn 5 and was in a precarious position. Thankfully towed. Cooper Webster was able to avoid him, and that moves Cooper up to P3. Oof, that was a hard hit. Good example of how this track bites when you least expect it. Well, this brings Olenek back up to 4th once again. And now, how about this? Stefan Schlacker, who started this race in 9th, has been promoted to 5th position with all the chaos in front of him.
And the most interesting thing is that Stefan barely has seen any other car on track today. He has just profited from all the mistakes that other people are making, just keeping it between the white lines, and that's just bringing him everything today. He's the 11th driver in this field, iRating wise. He qualified in P9 and is now driving around to P5. And this is one of the things that we were talking about before the broadcast, Joe. It is going to be an exciting race no matter what until all 22 laps are completed because of mistakes that you just saw Roman Pawlowski make. The walls are always so close to this track, and no matter which lap it is, there's always the threat of a driver making a mistake and just ruining this race. Even though he is not under pressure or whatever, the walls are always so close that you can just end up there and finish and retire.
Well, in the last 5 laps, we've seen all of the top 5 positions change hands. So why don't let's shake the Etch-a-Sketch and reset here and get you up to speed. Joni Kaisen is back out front, leading once again. Dave Gelink is now in 2nd place, recovering after a number of drivers have wrecked in front of him. Cooper Webster now promoted to 3rd place through all of that, even though he's been sitting in P5 for much of this competition so far. Rob Olenek now down to 4th, but still, as things sit, Rob will be your season champion in the points. And then Stefan Schlacker, newcomer in the top 5 and newcomer in the series, really, you can say, currently sitting with number 11 on his car, but going to be gaining a decent amount of iRating if he can finish here.
Now, just looking at the pace of those 5 drivers that we just mentioned, Joni Kaisen and Dave Gelink, the gap between those 2 drivers has grown to around 1.5 seconds. But I have to say, Dave Gelink last time around actually was quite a bit quicker than the Finn in front of him, around 0.3 of a second. So let's see if Dave can actually keep that pace up. He was really close to his personal best lap time of this race. And if he can keep that pace up, he's putting a lot of risk in this driving, I have to say. Dave Gelink sliding through that chicane just now. The turn 9 to 10 chicane. But if you can keep this kind of pace up, he will put Joni Kaisen under pressure for P1 before the race is over.
It's not the only driver that's making inroads on the cars ahead. Gary Thiel, who we said did rejoin the race, has now gotten back up to 12th, but he's got about 4.5 seconds up to Blake Purdy. The thing is, he's about a second faster every lap than the number 9 car. So I get the feeling that Gary's at least going to be able to get up to 11th, and it's not far to the next car, Andrew Ang. From there, he's got a huge gap. And again, to have any chance at taking the championship, Thiel has to take 6. Urquhart, is out of the race after having a monster accident down into Lepingle. This is a solo incident.
Wow, and it actually doesn't even look like such a hard crash there. It's just at the last moment of slowing that car down, he lost control and basically rode himself up the wall and just flipped it. You can see it here. Everything seems like peachy, to be honest, on the rundown towards the hairpin. Gets it lined up, slows the car down normally, but then in the last moment he snaps to the left, runs up against the wall, turns himself upside down, and that's the race over for the UK&I driver. That's a shame because he was doing well in P8. This means that drivers like Grand Patullo are now promoted 1 position up. Grand Patullo is now in P8. That's a good result for him. Same for Blake Purdy, who's now under a lot of... who just got by Andrew Ang as well.
I wonder if maybe that was a case of him just downshifting too quickly into first, and boy, that car snapped. So as we come back to the number 9 of Blake Purdy, now in 9th place. That's Andrew Ang behind him, very close. Just having recently taken that. Gary Thiel's now within 2.7 seconds of both of these drivers and closing. Thiel now promoted to 11th because of Philip's problems.
I'm just thinking that Andrew Ang, with this P10 position at the moment, he finishes several positions in front of Colin Coker. And if Andrew Ang can keep it on track, and he almost loses it there. He just keeps it in a real straight line, but this will help Gary Thiel to close down the gap a little bit more. But if Andrew Ang finishes around 10th, 11th place, I think that he will be right on the same amount of points as Colin Coker. With the absence of Hideki Kotvisto, I think that will mean that Andrew Ang will finish on the podium in the Formula 2 Championship. So let's keep an eye on where he is compared to Colin Coker. Now let's go to P6. That battle is heating up as well. It's Daniel Sadro being chased down by Matt Wright. Matt Wright has had a couple of good laps, especially with his personal best last time around, and 133.1 was around 0.4 of a second quicker than Daniel Sadro there. The gap between these 2 drivers is around half a second. Matt Wright is really making some headway today, Joe. He has already won 4 positions since the race started.
And I'm glad you brought up that Formula 2 championship. Even if it's just for a podium in that, I imagine that is a point of pride for those drivers. Coming down the Riverside stretch, Wright still hounding Daniel Sadro, breaking into turn 8. It's a little bit smoother for these 2 than what we saw with Ang. And so no opportunity quite yet for Matt Wright. Oh, and I think we had some sort of mistake with Dave Gelink, because he was very close to Joni Kaisen, and suddenly now I see he's way far back. I think he had a cut course coming through 8 and 9. So he lost a ton of time just with that one small error.
Absolutely. Yeah, around 1.5 seconds he lost there, Dave Gelink. It don't really hurt him. He is quicker than Joni Kaisen, but with 9 laps to go, this will really put some pressure on him as well, because with the pace advantage that he has, it will just be maybe 2 laps of trying that he has at the end left when he reaches the back of the fin. Now, in the meantime, Andrew Ang got overtaken by Gary Thiel. So because Gary Thiel is now in the top 10. Andrew Ang is only 2 positions in front of Colin Coker.
Thiel made a straightforward pass down into turn 6 to get himself into the top 10. He's got about 4.5 seconds to reach Blake Purdy.
Sorry, there was I got a little bit scared for Blake Purdy there, who almost lost control of his car in the final chicane. He's chasing down Grand Prix, and he got a very wild exit out of the final chicane. He kept it in the straight line, and luckily for him, he actually keeps the pressure on the car in front as well. This is the battle for P8 we're looking at on board with Grand Prix looking behind to Blake Purdy. Now Blake Purdy is one of those drivers as Grant is having a horrible chicane there. Completely loses the first apex in the turn 3-4 chicane, and that might give Blake an opportunity here. He takes a look very late to the inside, dives it a little bit there. What a beautiful move from Blake Purdy there.
That was a real Purdy pass as Blake moves himself up into 8th. Grant Petullo now has to give chase, but he's got to look in his mirrors. 2.5 seconds now to Gary Teal, who continues his climb. He's not giving up on this championship. Olenek is in 4th, but Olenek has to fall down a lot of positions for Gary Teal to have any sort of hope. He's got 8 laps to go. Anything can happen. As we've seen, this has been a topsy-turvy race, even though it's looked like a bit of a dud in terms of the championship hunt, with Rob Olenek looking pretty solid. The number 5 that you see on your screen sitting in 4th place, and that is a lapped car behind him. He is all by his lonesome. Olenek about 4 seconds back from 3rd place. Cooper and 11, almost 12 seconds ahead of Schlacher behind.
Gary Teal is now closing up quickly on the 2 cars in front. Gary is still in P10, but he will elevate himself to P8 quickly, I think, as he's catching Grant Petullo and Blake Purdy very quickly. The gap between these 2 drivers is around 2 seconds. With Gary Teal by far the quickest one around. He was around 3 seconds quicker than Blake Purdy last time, around 4 seconds quicker than Grant Petullo. It gets very close there in the turn 4 chicane. That's not what he wants there. He probably wants an easy pass to get that P9 position. Now, will he do the same thing in turn 6 as Blake Purdy did last time? He brakes very late, moves very quickly there. He does the same thing as Blake Purdy did. And that's P9 for Gary Teal. So he needs to move up 3 more positions. Does he want to have any chance on getting that P1 position in the championship? But before that happens, he needs Rob Olenek to have some problems as well.
I have to say, I am wowed by the way that Teal has come back into things. He's been helped a little bit by the attrition, but getting up to 9th, considering he was pretty much dead last after the first lap, is no mean feat, considering there's about 18 cars in this field taking the green flag. Blake Purdy about 1.5 seconds up the road. Blake was the other driver that came in with Gary Teal at the start of the race. So he's essentially been following him through, although Blake had a much shorter stop at the start, gains a ton of ground. Gary is flying out there. He's running 132s, 131 last time by a 31.8 out on track. Compare that to our leaders running a 31.4. That is very comparable pace to the top drivers.
But it's also a very good feeling for a driver when you make that early pit stop. You know that you're all the way on the back of the field, and that hurts. But if you just continuously overtake cars in front of you, you actually feel like you're literally making progress through the race, and that just can motivate you to go faster and faster, and maybe even drive a little bit quicker than you would if you wouldn't have had that problem at the beginning of the race. Gary Teal, now officially, look how quickly he's closing down Blake Purdy in front of him. He wasn't able to take a look on the inside of turn 6 like he did last time around on Grand Prix, but he is putting Blake under pressure. Blake defending the inside of turn 8 there.
Even from that far back, Blake was going defensive. And remember, we were only on the other side of the island, the other side of the circuit, when I said he was a 1.5 seconds back and already trying to go for this spot. Teal, he does go to the inside. I didn't think he was going to put his nose in through Lepingle. Coming off the corner, he's going to have the slipstream car squirming under the power as the number 6 looks to try and get up into P8. Blake Purdy, is he going to defend coming down the rowing lake? No, he's going to give him the inside. He sees the writing on the wall. He lets Gary Teal through.
Yeah, Blake Purdy probably knew that there was no effort lost there to try and stay in front of Gary Thiel. There, he knew that Gary Thiel was a lot quicker, so he relegates one position to P9. Let's see if Gary Thiel actually can make some headway now. I think that he will have a very big challenge in front of him to close the gap to Daniel Cedro, who's around 30 seconds in front of him. But Daniel Cedro is involved in quite a nice battle at the moment. He just got passed, I think, by Matt Wright. I remember Matt Wright being behind Daniel Cedro a few laps ago. Now Daniel Cedro is behind. These two drivers are still very close together in the battle for P6.
Yeah, I think about Thiel's only hope at this point is for those two to start fighting a hell of a lot for them to lose 24 seconds in 5 laps. Now, we've been keeping half an eye on our leaders here and there. Kaijinen gained a gap on Gelink because of Dave making a mistake. He's closed it down to about 1 second, and he's still got laps left, but does he have anything for Joni here? We've seen Kaijinen is probably not going to make this easy, Johan.
It's going to be very difficult for Dave Gelink to get by, but because Joni has been very consistent, very strong today. Maybe he's not the quickest driver out there, but he's probably the most consistent driver out there. On raw pace, he's losing around 2/10 per lap at the moment. And that will mean that Dave Gelink will have just enough time to close down the gap, get to the rear gearbox of Joni Kaijinen in front and try a move in the last lap. But look here visually as they go through the hairpin. The gap has already shrunk to 0.8 of a second. It will just go quicker and quicker with the draft that Dave Gelink will have now over the rowing straight. You can just see him visually closing the gap. 1 car length, 2 car lengths, I think, over this straight now, probably even a few more before they start braking for the final chicane. This is just evaporating, that second lead that he had a few moments ago, because looking at it now, the gap has shrunk to under half a second. I think that Dave Gelink will have 3-4 laps time to try and prod and do everything that he can to get by Joni Kaijinen and get that victory here today.
This could wind up being a stunner for sure, because I did not think with as slow as it took Dave to regain most of that ground, now being just a few car lengths back and another error. Dave saves it and keeps it out of the wall, but all that progress in just half a lap goes back in 1 corner. 0.8 of a second now to try and make up. He certainly seems strong on the latter part of the circuit. Let's see if he can regain it under braking. He certainly took a lot out of it coming to Lepingle. They're heading into turn 8 here. It was 0.8 of a second down to 0.7. Coming off the corner. Certainly seems to be under braking 0.6 of a second. Whew. Coming into the corners, Dave is looking monstrous.
He looks so incredibly quick, but at the same time he takes so many risks, and you could see it a few corners ago when those risks pay out in time gained, but also means that sometimes you just lose a bunch of time because you get a little bit too sideways or maybe cut a corner. Now over the straight again, over the back straight towards the chicane. The gap between them last time around was 0.4 of a second. Under braking, it's less than 0.4 of a second. He is closing in more and more through past the wall of champions there. I think Dave Gelink, he really has to win a little bit more before he can put real pressure on Joni Kaijinen. And he can see the blue car getting bigger and bigger in his rear view mirror. And at the moment, Joni Kaijinen knows as well that he's just too far away to be any real threat. And if he can just keep his car wide enough, Dave Gelink is not going to get by.
So with those two remaining close, let's stay with this on screen, but just to update you for the championship situation, Olenek remains in 4th. Nothing's changed there. Thiel's actually chopped it down to 18 seconds. Now, this is probably too little too late, but he is coming fast for Daniel Cedro and Matt Wright to get himself into that 6th position. Again, that does not seal the championship. It only gives him the possibility of being able to take the championship. So it is still does not mean that he will be able to move into 1st. He has to beat Rob Olenek and hope that Olenek does not score points.
Just Gary Thiel is winning a lot of time, but it's also because Daniel Cedro lost quite a bit of time in traffic. He had to go by Robert Reynolds and Colin Coker a few laps ago, and that just meant that he was around 3 seconds per lap slower. Let's see if Gary Thiel can dispatch those lap cars a little bit quicker. and keep that gap slinking down before the race is over. Now we go back to the lead battle at the moment. It has grown to 0.8 of a second. Dave Gelink once again just had a moment where he went full opposite lock. You can see that he just loses several car lengths immediately, around 0.3 of a second last time around. But with 3 more laps to go, there's not a lot of... as both cars kind of overshoot turn 1 there. There's nothing lost, nothing gained for either of them. But there's not a lot of opportunities left for Dave Gelink if he just cannot get those mistakes to go away. If he keeps making those, he will get closer every time again, but just will never be able to actually close it down so he can make a move on Yoni.
Certainly needs to try and clean up his act, but it is a Scandinavian battle here. Finland versus the Netherlands. Dave looking strong coming out of turn 7. He's got it back down to 0.4 of a second. Once again, 2 laps to go, 1.5 laps to go really for these two drivers. And he managed to get through these corners nicely. Ooh, that's looking much, much better. He is now only 2 car lengths behind Dave Gelink, hunting down Joni Kaisunen. Oh, and he almost gets into the back of him coming into Lepingle. But he still manages to get the good run off the corner. They're coming down the rowing lake. Last time they were this close on this portion of the class, they got too close. They came together. It's a defensive move to the inside for Joni Kaisunen. He's got the reverse situation where he's able to hold the desired line. Oh, and another bobble coming over the curbs for Dave Gelink.
Great driving from Dave. He went way earlier on the brakes there to try and get a good run through the chicane and try to cross basically directly after it. Just didn't pay out. He went too hard over the curb, so he is sliding all the way for turn 1 and turn 2. We have seen that a lot of times. That blue car is just squirming, trying to get the power down. This time again, sliding through that corner, and that's not gaining him anything. Through turn 3, through turn 4. You don't want to hit the wall, and for 22 times they have not done it there. They're still very, very close. This corner, turn 6, is a very difficult one. And you can see Dave Gelink under braking, winning several car lengths. But again, under the throttle, he just cannot get it as smoothly down as Joni Kaisunen in front of him. And he immediately wins that 1-2 car lengths back that he lost under braking. Right now on the run down towards the turn 9, turn 10 chicane, under the bridge. Again, under braking, Dave Gelink is so strong if he doesn't make a mistake. On throttle, he slides slightly more, and that means that over the straight, Joni Kaisunen has just a little bit more extra speed that he needs.
Not many opportunities left, and they've got lap traffic in front of them.
The touch again! Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
He manages to get by, but it's going to be a drag race. He's slightly ahead. Kaisunen moves into the slipstream, coming down the rowing lake. Can he manage to pull something off in the final corner? He's to the inside. They come up to the final chicane, deep on the brakes for Dave Gelink. And now it's a run to the finish line, but I don't think that Kaisunen has enough. Dave Gelink takes it today. Here for the final round, the win goes to the Dutchman.
Rounding out the podium is another pro driver, Cooper Webster. We haven't talked about him a lot today. He comes across the line in P3, but let's now focus our attention on Rob Olenek because he deserves the attention. He is our Lotus 49 championship winner. He wins with P4 here in Montreal, the championship, finishing in front of Gary Thiel and Ove Trangaré.
That has got to be a beautiful feeling for Olenek. Stefan Schlager going to earn himself a nice top 5, having started the race in 9th. And don't forget about Gary Thiel. Well, unfortunately was only able to close it in to 16 seconds. Instead, now he's looking behind a little bit because Blake Purdy has regained ground. Must have been a mistake that we missed for the number 6 car. He's just missed out on the championship. It will give him 2nd place. I'm not sure if that's any consolation, but Gary Thiel at least made a good recovery drive to get back into the top 10. That's going to be the last of them. So we've got time for the replay.
The GSRC LOTUS 49, so
as we take a look down into Lepingle, I was distracted by the lap traffic just as you saw what was happening between them. So I want to get a closer look here to see down into the...
Yeah, it just seems to be the same thing that Dave Gelink had several times at other moments in the race, that he just brakes really late, and he was caught out by Joni in front of him, not braking as late as he was. A slight bump and run, I think they called it in oval racing. And that was all that Dave needed to get better traction out of Lepingo and get by him. We go back here to a replay of that incident, just getting closer and closer. And that little bump just destabilizes the car of Joni. It means that he cannot get the power down as smoothly. And yeah, that's all that Dave needed to get that position. Good defending from him as well as they went towards the final chicane. But that was all that he needed, Dave, to win here. And he actually said in chat after the race that his car was all over the place. So maybe in the interviews we can ask him about what happened exactly.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to hear from both sides on that monumentous battle. Let's take a quick break, though. Before we get to that, we'll come back with the official results as well as driver interviews. On screen, you'll see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It was an exciting final round, but the battle for the win was not our championship contenders. It was two newcomers, sort of at least. Kaijinen has been here a number of times before, but he was beat by 1/10 of a second by Dave Gelink, who took the win with a little bit of elbows out racing. Joni, as I said, right behind him in second place. Cooper Webster, probably the quietest race we've seen so far today, taking third place and rounding out the podium. But really, the celebrations are down in fourth place. Even though there's no podium for him, Rob Olenek takes the championship, his first championship here in the Lotus 49 series. Stefan Schlacker takes fifth behind Tim. And then how about Matt Wright going from 11th to 6th? A nice climb for him, just beating out Daniel Sadro in seventh place. Gary Teal had to do a lot more, but he was scuppered at the very beginning of the race. We're still not sure quite what happened to cause him to take that pit stop. We suspect maybe some damage or something And he winds up in 8th position. Blake Purdy behind Tim, finishing 9th, and Grant Petullo rounding out the top 10.
Andrew Ang is the first driver outside of the top 10. He finishes P11, 1 lap down in front of Don Good and Colin Coker. Now this means, I think if I calculated correctly, that Andrew Ang will finish in P3 in the Formula 2 Championship, just in front of Colin Coker, just overtaking him in the last round of the championship. Ronald Reynolds, he is the last driver finishing the race and actually seeing the checkered flag in P14. We had 4 retirements today, starting with Philippe Urquhart, who had a big moment in Lepingo, Roman Pawlowski, who retired early in the race, Marco Kika and Ove Trangrate, who also had to retire early on, finishing P17 and P18.
And we've got our unofficial champion with us. Rob Olenek has joined us in the booth. First of all, Rob, congratulations. This, according to our math, gives you the championship this season.
I think it does. Thanks a lot. It was hard, and it came down to the wire. I don't know what happened to Roman in the race. I haven't been able to see it back yet.
He unfortunately wrecked out in turn 5, just clipped the inside wall, and that took him out. And that actually brings me to an interesting point. Your rivals in the points hunt, Gary Teal and Ove Trangrade, fell out quickly. How soon did you realize that they had big trouble, and what did that do to your approach to this race? Did it free you up, or did it calm you down in the sense that maybe you backed off a little bit?
I wasn't paying attention to it in the beginning when it all happened. I only looked at it later in the race. I was really I was trying to race hard but safe, up with the guys in the front. And I don't know what did they just fall off, or did something actually happen to them too? I don't even know.
Well, we do know what happened to Ove Trangrade. He unfortunately got involved in an incident in the first couple laps that we think damaged his suspension. We're not entirely sure what happened to Gary, because he suddenly pitted and we didn't see any contact, but there always could have been in the early stages. This has been a bit of a weird season, obviously, with Mick having to step away. That certainly helped, but only one victory to take the championship. Does this feel a little bit like Formula One circa 1982 with Keke Rosberg taking the championship with 1 win?
I don't know that, but I think that's probably the only way I'm going to win one of these championships, is have some stuff kind of go my way. I don't have the fastest pace. Generally, I try and just finish consistently and well. This car is harder than most to not have crashes and incidents. This is the first race I actually finished this week, so I got kind of lucky. But that's too bad with Gary. He definitely had really good pace this week. He was in front of me in the other 2 races we did so far.
That is a shame for him, but you gotta make it happen where it counts. And speaking of making it happen where it counts, you may have noticed we had some black stripe drivers in this week. Coming up to the super session, are you eyeing that with maybe thinking you could take 500 credits, or seeing the performance of both Dave and Yoni, do you think that's out of the window?
I think I have a chance. Like I was in first today at one point. It's really hard to pass on this track. So, if a little bit of luck can go my way, I think my pace is okay. It's not, the fastest. I knew when Dave showed up in here, I saw him in the server, that there was a really good shot he was going to win. He's just super fast and everything. But we'll see. I mean, the car is not the easiest car to drive in the world, so it's easy to make a mistake for anybody.
Absolutely. Well, again, congratulations. This was a fun season, and that was a fantastic racer.
Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next season.
That was Rob Olenek, your champion, and getting a top 5 finish is Stefan Schlacher. Johan's going to talk to him about his race.
Yeah, Stefan, welcome to the booth. If I have to describe your race, I would say a good race, but a boring race. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah. No, I'm honestly first. I'm super happy. Second, top 5 in the 4th race, so that's very great. Boring race, yeah, it's circuit Villenueve for me. I really like this circuit. I consider it my second home track away from the Red Bull Ring. and I'm always performing quite well. So today I was just outperforming my normal competitors, and yeah, it's just what happens here at Villenueve. Either you're fast or you're not.
But you actually have a very good result as well. Like you mentioned, your second top 5. What's really your secret, so to speak? You qualify in P9, that's a little bit in the middle of the pack, but in the final races in Road America and here as well, you just managed to bring yourself all the way forward. Is it just you are able to really be consistent in the race and just win a lot of positions like that? Or what is it else?
Well, first of all, I'm super consistent in the race trim. Like, I think my slowest lap was just a second or 8/10 slower than my fastest lap, so that plays in. And then my qualifying, I lag there, so it always makes for an exciting start for me. Like today, I gained like 3 positions again, actually 4 positions in total, because 2 guys wrecked out. But it's just like that. If I can get into the rhythm, I'm gonna be strong. I'm gonna be quite fast. I'm gonna be consistent. I'm just gonna do my stuff. But if I get the qualifying bad, then I will have to work for it, and that's really the reason where my racing comes from, because I have to get good. I have to be fast in the race to get up back again to make up for my lackluster performance in qualifying.
Fair enough. Well, you came into this championship in the butt end of the season. You participated in the final races there. Are you coming back next season? And if so, what are your goals for next season? Because you have the consistency, at least, I would say, to aim for a top 5.
Yeah, that is my point. At least a top 5. Before this race, I actually checked the season standings, and even though I just joined, as I said, the last 5 races without racing Indianapolis, I'm actually 22nd in the standings overall, with only having 5 starts in the season. So, and Rob has won the season with 27 starts. So, I just have to get a consistency again in this car. Get good in qualifying in this car, because that's where I'm lacking the most. I think today was the first race I actually used qualifying fuel in qualifying, and my race was still a faster lap than my qualifying lap. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I guess that's just me. But yeah, top 5 regular, and then after mid-season, I'm expecting myself to get at least 1 or 2 podiums.
Hey, fair enough. We'll write down get good and get better for you for next season. Thank you for talking with us. Congratulations with another top 5 result, and we'll hope to see you again next season.
Thank you. Sure.
Stefan Slager just talking with us now. I just wanted to put a little bit of emphasis as well on one driver that unfortunately didn't come in today, which is Grand Prix. We, of course, talked with Rob Olenek. He is our winner in the Formula 1 championship, but we have talked so much about the Formula 2 championship, Joe, that it would only be fair to just mention that Grand Prix has won that championship. So after Rob Olenek, he will be the second driver finishing today with a lot of champagne.
I'm sure he is ecstatic about that. And that is a great note to close up on, with a big thank you to the Lotus 49 community for bringing us back for another season of coverage. And we already have them confirmed for next season as well. Thanks goes out to iRacing for putting us on IESN. Make sure and subscribe when you get the opportunity. Go to their YouTube page, click the big red button, and get all of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series in your YouTube feed. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast. They're listed here on your screen. In addition, with a big thank you to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Johan, Amjad, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at the globalsimracingchannel.com, or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Next season, we will kick off at Le Mans. So that's going to be 2 weeks from now. Make sure and pay attention to that. We're going to week 13 next week. That'll be Saturday, June 15th, when we come back at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.